2021 meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. I'd like to welcome everyone and ask you to silence your cell phones if you've not already done so, and to cease private conversations at this time. We'll begin by having our members introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Ray Casano.
Shahab Emrani.
Festus Pobeni.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Keenan Kinsel.
Caitlin Jammo.
Terry Nowitzki.
Frank Hibbard.
Mark Hunter.
Very good. Now I'm looking for, we'll take up the item, the approval of the April 7th, 2021 meeting, the minutes. Are there any corrections that anyone would like to request to the minutes? Okay. Then I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 7th meeting. Do we have a Caitlin? And do we have a second? Terry. Very good. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. If there are any citizens that would like to address the board, keep your comments limited to downtown. If you're commenting on items that are going to appear on the agenda, please hold it until that item. Speakers must identify themselves and will enforce a time limit of 3 minutes. Please go ahead. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Welcome. I appreciate being here. Beth Daniels is my name. I'm the Vice President of the Clearwater Arts Alliance. I've appeared a few times before this board in the past. There have been some changes in members, but our organization is a nonprofit 501c3 that is, our mission is to support art and cultural events in Clearwater, to promote culture and to make this a livable community for artists, hopefully in creative times. So we think that's a good thing for our community, and it's been a while since I've spoken to the board. Just to make you briefly aware, I brought some materials. We have started doing a regular public art walk. It is all concentrated in the downtown area. Some of you may recall that this board, among others, and also some city and some private support, has resulted in some of the signal boxes being wrapped with colorful artistic wrappings. Those are projects directly of the Alliance. However, there's also sculptural elements that are in the median and at the library and at City Hall. We have gathered together all that information. Who funded it, when was it put in, what's the artist, what's the name of it all, and gathered it into information that can be on a docent-led tour. So you can go for an hour, probably an hour, 10 minutes at the most, to go right around the downtown area, and in an hour, hour and 10 minutes, you can see 25 to 30 different individual public art items. That includes some of the placemaking items, such as the new storm drains that are going in, etc. So we are both organizing and would like to invite this group, if you're interested, to have a special set, like an invitation group, where you would say it would be convenient for our group to go and take part in this, so we can spread the word and tell other people in the community about it. We could set a special time, start in a different place if that was handy for you, or we have a regular set event on the third Saturday of each month. So we're trying to get some momentum for that, and just wanted you all to be aware and to give you these materials about it, if I may.
Very good.
I got one little packet for each person, and I have some more. Obviously, on our website, there's quite a bit of information about it. We're trying to advertise it on social media, and would like to know if you all have ideas of how we could get the word out a little better. Because I think that these are the kinds of things which, if people knew about them and were, able to come, it would draw people to downtown and make downtown a more enjoyable place. So if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do that. I do know we had invited the PADB, the Public Art and Design Board. They have the ability to pick the artists for some of the larger city-funded projects that are funded with ordinance money. But we were trying to find out and make sure that if we invited you as a group, as long as there was no, meeting discussion or anything, that it would be appropriate that we could do that. So I put that out there to your council or to the clerk to help us with that. But if you're interested, we'd be very willing to set up a special time and take your board or as many members who could come on a tour.
Very good. Thank you,
So
Beth.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Winders.
If you were interested in doing that, some of the art is actually some of the mural program was started in the 90s by the DDB in cooperation with the CRA. But if you are interested in doing it as a group, you are able to discuss art, you're able to discuss individual works, you can't discuss whether or not you're funding them. So that it's not inappropriate to do a group like that.
Oh, good.
Or illegal is what I meant to say.
Yeah. Great, and before we move on, I'd just like to point out that almost any artistic event that seems to be occurring downtown has Beth's name associated with it.
Not all of it, but some.
And I would like to publicly acknowledge you for all your volunteerism in this area. It's much appreciated.
And we enjoyed seeing you at some of the concerts too.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else, any other citizen comments? Very good. Okay, let's move on to the next item. New business, the March 2021 financial statement. Howard, if you could take that.
Good afternoon, Board. Howard Smith, Business Assistant Administrator for the Community Redevelopment Agency. So for this item, the goal is to approve the March 2021 financial statements for filing. Funds spent in the month of March 2021, total $21,559.93. Items that were spent was a partnership with Amplify Clearwater in the amount of $1,000. The holiday lighting project in the amount of $147. The Jolly Trolley Downtown Loop, $2,931. And the Business Assistant Grants in the amount of $6,499.50. The public meeting notice for advertising the DDB meetings cost is $70. And the property appraiser's fee totals $793.60. Your ending balance for the DDB is $535,396.70.
Very good. Any questions from the board? Did you have any other comments about it, Howard? Very good. Are there any citizen comments about this item? Okay, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the March 2021 financial statement for filing. Okay, we have
I move
Shahab.
to approve the March 2021 financial statement.
Very good. Do we have a second? Ray Casano. Very good. Is there any board discussion of this item? There being none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Looks unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to 4.2, the April 2021 financial statement.
Again, Howard Smith, Business Assistant Administrator for the Community Redevelopment Agency. And for this item is to approve the April 2021 financial statements for filing. Funds spent in the month of April 2021 totaled $7,980.14. Funds were spent on the holiday lighting project in the amount of $147. The Jolly Trolley Downtown Loop in the amount of $1,465.50. The public hearing fee notice in the amount of $235.50. The CRA management and administration fee total $6,340.41. You did get a credit return back from the auditors for the audit that took place in, I believe that was January. So they gave us a total back of $1,000. So the budget has been credited that. And then the tax collectors commission in the amount of $791.73. And the ending balance for the month of April total $527,416.56.
Very good. Any questions from the board?
One question.
Yes.
Yeah, why are we funding the Jolly Trolley Loop?
Well, the Jolly Trolley has a agreement with the DDB to provide funding to them. The agreement was renewed last year, I believe, in 2019. I think in the month of September or in October. So, and it's a 3-year agreement with the renewal.
And how
So it's to
much
provide services
are we
through
funding?
downtown. Excuse me?
How much are we funding
In
them?
total? I would have to follow with you. I do not know that exact figure.
Okay,
So I will provide you an update for that.
thank you.
They're just as background, we've been funding them for a number of years now. Not, like Clearwater, the DDB actually, only funds a very, very tiny portion of the cost of the Jolly Trolley to come through downtown on its way to Tarpon Springs and Dunedin and so on. Dunedin and Tarpon disproportionately pay quite a bit more, but the Jolly Trolley stops here, so it actually works out very well for us.
Prior to the street closure, there was actually designated stops in downtown on Cleveland Street where the Jolly Trolley actually stopped and picked up customers and also let them off.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to know.
And it's not actually a 3-year agreement, it has to be approved every year because a board cannot,
Make future commitments.
So
Okay.
it's approved annually.
Thank you.
The funding is.
Caitlin?
The budgeted amount is $17,586.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, are there any citizen comments on this item? Okay, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the April 2021 statement for filing. Okay, we have a motion from Terry. Do we have a second? Shahab gets the second. And do we have any discussion of this item? Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the financial statement for filing,
Aye.
say aye. Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, so now we're on to 5.1, and surprise, it's Howard. And so we have a discussion on the guidelines for future funding requests.
And again, Howard Smith, CRA Business Assistant Administrator. For this item is to discuss the changes on the guidelines for DDB funding requests. So the purpose of this is the discussion to receive direction from you, the Downtown Development Board, on how the board wishes to modify or not modify its adopted policies, procedures, and work plan for awarding grant funds to applicant. Board members have expressed a desire to provide clarity in potential grant applications and build a consensus among the board members on what and how the DDB wishes to provide funding to outside organizations. The board has agreed to suspend hearing funding requests in the month of May and also in the month of June to address potential amendments to the funding requesting process. So before I go into the discussion items and also the action item I would like to leave you with, I would like to do a couple of things for our conversation today. First is provide you a historical perspective. So the reason why we kind of changed the funding process, developed the funding forms, as well as simplify the process for people to apply. As well as after I'm done doing that, I will leave you with an action that I want you to take to be able to provide assistance to the CRA to determine future funding requests. And then after that is done, I would ask that we go into the discussion questions that were provided to you earlier in the month that brought us to this meeting today. Okay? So with that being said, I'd like to provide you a historical perspective. So for the historical perspective, let me get my notes. As of February 2020, the DDB updated all its ordinance, and we worked in conjunction with the DDB's attorney to make sure that all the ordinance and policies for the DDB were updated. In addition to updating the ordinance, the DDB updated the funding policy around the same time in February 2020. So for updating the funding policy, as the previous policy that was in place, part of that process was that you had to know my predecessor and Francis to be able to get connected to the DDB. In addition to that, the DDB only funded events that took place in downtown. It was primarily within the core of the downtown districts. So one of the things that we did to update and move the policy forward, we had a meeting, and this was around about April, where we updated the policies so that events could happen anywhere as long as they were in the DDB district. We revised the funding process so that funding requests could come in on a rolling basis. So previously, before funding was heard in September, it was decided in October, and that was at one time during the year that anybody that wanted to come in and present to the board would present for funding, and then there could be no other funding, there were no other funding requests heard during the year. So we moved that to a rolling basis so that applicants can come in any time during the year and be able to receive funding from the DDB. Also, we aligned the funding request with the 3 budgeted categories for the board. And those categories were marketing, and the goal of marketing was to increase awareness of downtown as a fun destination. Also, business assistance, and the goal of business assistance was to retain businesses and attract new businesses to downtown. And then policy and project work. And the goal of the policy and project work was to create a more welcoming downtown. And then in May, I worked with Keenan to be able to update the policy form, the funding request form. And that funding request form actually aligns with the DDB budget, and also aligned it with the marketing, business assistance, and policy work. So when individuals approach the board to be able to get funding, their funding request had to align with the DDB current work plan, and then the 3 buckets that we will pull funding from would either be under business assistance, marketing, or policy and project work. And then in September, the previous board met and developed a current work plan. And in that work plan, we developed the goals that align with the 3 budgeted funding categories. So that way, when a funding request come in, if it did not align with the budgeted categories and the DDB work plan, the current work plan, then that funding would be something that you all would never see. So, for the revision and the updates, the DDB current members at that time wanted to increase the community awareness of the DDB. So typically, again, like I said, you had to know my predecessor to be able to get involved with the DDB. You had to know the process. And the DDB, you as a previous board, funded a variety of events and projects and programs in the DDB district, not just in downtown. And the goal was to simplify the process. The previous application was 5 pages and had 31 questions. In our current application process, either if you want to apply for marketing or for a special event, it's a 2-page application with also a map that shows the DDB district area. And then also the goal was to allow people to come for funding anytime during the course of the year, as opposed to September, to approve funding in October. And the board, we were on track from my standpoint to allow a variety of funding for acts going back to May. You all as a board approved signage for the Sim City Center. And then we also had acts come in that we're in the process of discussing for free ride, where we're looking at having them come in and actual funding to bring people from the beach to downtown. To kind of jog some memories, going back to May of last year. And then COVID hit, in which that really hampered ability for funding requests to come in, because people were very limited on what they could or could not do based off of COVID and the protocols that was in place. And so on that note, that's kind of a little bit of a historical walkthrough for how we kind of got to the new funding process, where we are now. Okay?
Good.
So with that, for our discussion tonight, staff would like to have any amendments to the process prepared for the board's consideration at the July meeting to enable the CRA to advise funding process and also inform future applicants of the expectations of the board. The DDB attorney will present staff recommendations. DDB attorney will present any legal issues that need to be considered at the June meeting for tonight. And so the questions that were provided to you all for homework for discussion was, 1, should the DDB consider and provide direction on the following items to be discussed? Does the DDB want to modify its current work plan goals? Should the DDB adopt a minimum and maximum grant funding amount? Should the DDB institute some matching requirements and other financial requirements of applicants? Should the DDB incorporate diversity and equity considerations into its funding process? And is the DDB comfortable with this current funding process? And are there any other type of activities or projects that the DDB does not want to fund? So I will provide you the responses to your questions. So here's the current DDB work plan. So for the first question, does the DDB want to modify its current work plan to change the goals? So every year, we will actually go through and do a work plan. The current work plan that we have in place will be in place until September 21. So the marketing goal is increase awareness of downtown as a fun destination for Clearwater residents and employees. And the strategy to complete that is fund the production of a variety of fund the production and marketing of a variety of special events throughout the DDB district, fill vacant storefronts with art, and increase awareness of downtown as a tourist destination. Under business assistance, the goal is to retain new businesses and attract new businesses. And the strategy for that is to raise awareness of the DDB's funding support for local businesses, enhance the temporary closure of Cleveland Street through supportive improvements to the streetscape, outdoor dining, entertainment, and advertising, and also determine feasibility of attracting a hotel to downtown, and then also connect residents and visitors to downtown through supporting a variety of transportation choices. And under policy and project work, the strategy there was to establish a diversity and equity committee, support the Cleveland Street Lighting Project, activate Station Square to generate more pedestrian traffic to local businesses, and also conduct direct mail, videos, and social media campaigns to raise awareness of activities in downtown. So this is the current work plan that the funding requests and you all as a board have in place. So when a funding requests come in, if it does not align with one of these three categories, then it would not be funded, and you all would not see that funding request as a board, because this is part of the communication that I have with any potential grant requester. So for our discussion, for the items, if there was a majority of board members that wanted to bring that discussion to light, anything more than half, then on that note, it would be a question that would be worthy of discussion for you as board. So as I walk through these, I will let you know what the count was. And then on that note, for the two areas where there is a need for discussion, I would advise you of who voted and the caveat, not voted, but who responded with the yes answer, and then the caveats for those sections. Okay? And then I will give it back to the board members to discuss each one of the caveats. Okay, so on the question, does the DDB want to modify its current work plan? 2 board members voted yes, and 2 board members responded with a yes, and 5 board members responded with a no. So there will be no changes in that policy or process. Any comments on that one?
I have one comment, and that is, if I would hate to just arbitrarily prevent a very meritorious proposal for coming to our attention. So I would like to say that in general, our policy should be that if it doesn't meet these 3 items, that it should not be considered. But if something is brought to our staff people, like you or someone in your capacity, that seems very meritorious, that it's unique, new, that we just haven't anticipated, I would hate to decline it just because of a policy thing.
Okay.
I think there should be somewhere where you could have judgment to bring it to us and say, this is an exception that you might want to consider.
Well, in thinking about it that way, and because we want to make sure that we're bringing funding requests again that aligns with your requirements, and this was based off of us having a work plan, and this was a decision that was made by the board, if it's something that you all would like to change, then I think it would be worthy of a discussion, because as it stands now, they have to align with those 3 bucket areas.
Yeah, I understand.
And then if it is something that, in my opinion, that would be worthy of discussion, then from my standpoint, I would discuss that with Amanda to decide whether or not we would bring it to you.
Okay. I think you need to come to the microphone if you want to address us.
The board did not vote yes or no on that, because they can't do that unless they're here.
Yeah.
Okay? You may have indicated as individual board members on a public record that is being kept by you all, that whether or not you as an individual member was interested in revisiting the work plan, but you guys did not vote. All right?
Yeah, I think that's clear.
You were pulled.
We were polled.
Am I correct? Please, forgive me, no vote, yes, no
Yes.
response, was yes or no, not a vote.
I did have a similar discussion with you with exactly what you brought up, not exact wording, but is that, really didn't want to have a wall there that prevents anyone to come and ask for help. The idea was that maybe that exactly you guys use your judgment, that maybe you can coach them to have them align with those, so that way they can come to us and
I would say there would have to be some alignment. So as an example, we did have an individual who submitted a request that wanted to have the condos renovated and wanted to partner with the DDB to be able to do that. That did not necessarily align with the board, so that wouldn't come to y'all. But from the standpoint of what he was communicating, he would bring foot traffic to downtown. The apartment condos were fairly close, and at the end of the day, realistically, could it make sense? Yes. But where would that fit within the three budgeted categories that we have?
How many proposals have we not seen?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, since I've been here doing this, I would say approximately maybe 2. Majority of the people that are submitted, and then given now that we're kind of post-COVID and we started this process in 2020, we're very limited on what could be funded in terms of requests coming out.
Michael?
Yes, Chairman, I'm Michael Delk, Assistant City Manager. I have had similar questions before me with regard to administration, policy, or what we're working on. There have been times where we've suggested that people have 3 minutes to speak about any item that they want to speak on before City Council. And if they get the attention of City Council, and I would suggest maybe if they get the attention of the board, that is on every agenda.
That's a workable way to introduce it. Okay, that seems like a workable mechanism. So you can so advise somebody if it's particularly worthy. If it doesn't seem worthy at all, I don't know that you need to mention it.
I don't, sorry, Elise Winters. They're not saying that a proposal is worthy or not. They're saying, does it fall within the parameters you established?
Within their criteria, yes.
And if it doesn't fall within the parameters you established, then, citizens' comments for items not on the agenda. But there is no sense having staff review things for you if they're going to give you everything that comes in the door, whether or not it falls within your work plan.
Okay,
Thank you. There haven't been that many anyways.
Caitlin?
And I'll just highlight, when we look at least the first 3 in terms of the marketing, I mean, they're pretty expansive. So to the extent that we can provide further reiteration to the CRA, that we view those as expansive. But in essence, I view it as special events, highlighting that we're a tourist destination and, art being present. It specifically says vacant storefronts, but I think that could be pretty expansive, especially in light of special events. I mean, that theoretically doesn't leave a whole lot that would be excluded so long as it's located within downtown.
Right. So I think Mr. Delk's suggestion kind of handles my concern, that we can go with you having the 3 criteria or the 3 areas that we're interested in and operate with that. And then somebody still has the option to come to us and say what they want to say at any time. Okay? Let's move on to the next thing.
Okay, so for the next question, should the DDB adopt a minimum or maximum grant funding amount? So the responses were 4 yeses with 3 nos. So this is a discussion item that I will be seeking direction and guidance to you from the board to be able to address at this meeting, to be able to direct any funding requests coming in July. So under this item, Board Member Keenan replied with a yes. And so his response was funding requests should be in a ranked categories or a menu and potentially have a range from 0 to 5 for board members to review. Keenan, would you like to expand on that?
Well, yeah, it was in the spirit of all the restaurants blossoming in the street. I thought a menu would be appropriate. Appetizers. Well, anyway, that was my idea. But keeping it easy to see, one little graphic with different sections, make it real easy for somebody to see where they would fall, price-wise, or not.
I'm not sure I follow.
Like a menu, like a restaurant menu.
Yeah, for what? I forgot. I missed the very beginning.
Or where they would be allowed to participate in funding or not? Like if we had a minimum or maximum in the different categories?
Okay, is that, you seem to have,
I don't understand.
yeah, I don't either.
Just throw that one away then, Howard. Seemed like a good idea.
All right. And so the next board member that responded with a yes was you, Paris. And you responded with there should be a maximum, no more than 30% of the funding request should be provided to an applicant if approved. That's for you to be able to expand on.
Yeah, my thought on that was that out of a category, if we are allocating like $75,000 to a category, I'd rather not give it all to one entity. I would rather leave it open for various entities to participate. And it doesn't have to be 30%, but I just wanted to put a number in there for the discussion and say there should be some number so that no one entity can come and have 100%. We don't want to just give our responsibility and all our funding to somebody else to do. It's still our responsibility to proportion and decide where the funds are spent and how. So that was my reason for that.
Then the next board member that responded with the yes was Ray. He agreed that there should be a maximum for a marketing request. Right, want to expand on that?
Well, if someone gets an exorbitant amount, then other people say, well, look, you gave them that much, then we want it too, and you can get out of hand. We gave 130,000 to somebody, hadn't we, or something like that.
Like 100
What's that?
to the Downtown Merchants Association.
Yeah, so other people are gonna say, how come I can't get it? Look what you gave them. So I thought there should be some kind of maximum, and I'm definitely a fan of not giving 100%. They have skin in the game. It would cut back on some of the requests.
So with this one, the majority of the board members responded with the yes, with 3 board members responding with the no for discussion. So from there, where would you all like to proceed?
Does anyone have something to say? Caitlin?
So my thought process in creating guidelines is the more rules or the more kind of inflexible standards that you apply, then you're locked into that. So if we were to choose, hey, XYZ event or XYZ proposal is worthy of going outside of those guidelines, then we have to make a big deal substantiating why we are changing our rules for that funding request. My thought process was I'd rather there be a set of factors that we articulate clearly to people who seek funding from us, and we say these are the 4 factors we look at. So skin in the game, as Ray mentioned, the number of folks who are affected or touched in some way by that event or that funding request, the specific event or effect on downtown, and if there is is there some diversity or equity component to this, or does it have an effect with generating diversity within downtown Clearwater? Were the 4 factors I came up with. Everyone is going to look at that differently. But my concern about creating stringent rules, maximum minimums, is that sets us up to say, okay, well, does that rule 1 apply to all of the current funding requests that we have, specifically Ruth Eckerd or Capitol Theater, things like that? Because are we going to be creating exceptions for those current things that we have funded? And 2, in the future, I think we're pigeonholing ourselves from then being able to have the Downtown Merchants Association, which we went back and forth on in funding, and that's a really big funding request, and it's been very successful, it would appear, for the downtown, and they've done a lot of legwork. So I'm concerned about inflexibility in terms of our standards. That's why I said no.
Good point. Any other discussion points, sir?
I mean, that at any time you look at something, it's not a good idea to box yourself. At the same time, intelligence needs to be applied to it and look at it. Does this warrant that or not? I don't know if we ever, even if we set the budget of we can do all to one, I don't think we ever would just blow the entire one-on-one request. I don't know, it's just too many intelligent people on this board to go, no, it's a good idea, but no, we won't do. Definitely they should have a skin in the game, as I said to you. They have to, they've got to participate, do it all for them. My opinion, it's just not a good idea. It's never worked, giving the entire money to someone to go play. They should participate in it themselves.
Okay.
It does get us off the hook, though. So we're not the bad guy when someone comes in, wants a large thing, kind of gives us an out, public relations wise.
My thought on this is that the whole idea of having policy or some written down guideline is so that we don't have to revisit and reinvent the process every time somebody comes and talks to us. We should have some agreement on, this is really where we want to go, and it doesn't have to be, it's going to be a balance between being overly broad or overly restrictive, but we need to set where the banks of the river are and try to channel our course between those banks. But if you don't have any banks, it's just water sloshing around in all directions. You got to have some guidelines, I think. So you have to direct some idea of what your goals are and how you're going to achieve them. Like, for example, one of the questions was, should there be a minimum amount?
And a maximum.
And I don't see, aside from, if somebody comes and asks for $5, it's not worth your time to go over that request. But if somebody asks, any small amount, I don't want to say that that $500 is too small. If somebody just has a small event, I don't want them coming and asking for $1,000 just to qualify, if they can do it for $1,000, for $500. So I don't want to have something that arbitrarily inflates the cost of a thing. And then for participation, if somebody wants to put something that affects their own business, like say they want a grant for some aspect that they have a vested interest in the result, I think there definitely should be skin in the game and they should participate. I don't think it's our job as a board. I don't think it's the property owners of the district to fund improvements to all these buildings 100%. Like if somebody wants something done. But if it's some volunteer group that has no personal benefit whatsoever, that's just coming and volunteering their time to put on, a parade through downtown that they're not going to personally benefit from, I don't see, they're already volunteering their time. I don't say that they have to come up with half the money either. So I think we should differentiate between whether there's a vested interest to the person that's promoting the event or whether it's strictly a volunteer activity where they're donating their time and effort and expertise and we're providing the energy behind it to pull it off. My thoughts.
Good point.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Other.
The way I see it is we are trying to help downtown expand and grow and get people down here. So I think we should have the less restrictions, the better, because we want to have people come through. We want people to come and enjoy downtown and have more businesses and have it be open and free. So I think that the less restrictions we can have and we can judge it on an individual basis as it comes in, I think the better.
And in the current process,
Just a second. Elise wants to address this again. We should get you a microphone.
I think I have to come up here to be for the TV part, but you all, I understand less restrictions and making it more available, but you can't let it get to the point where it's arbitrary. All right, you need to have enough restrictions there so that you have a reason for refusing or granting, other than I didn't like that one, or I didn't think that one would work. It can't be arbitrary, so you need some restrictions there. Now, one of the things you did when you adopted this new policy, I gotta tell you, yours is a lot looser than ours ever was when I was on the board. We only helped individual businesses if it was for a specific grant purpose that we had already decided downtown needed. But we are in new times with COVID, and you had to meet certain requirements to qualify for that grant. So when we turned something down, it was for a reason in the paperwork. It wasn't arbitrary. if you, and you need some of that. Now, part of the deal you cut and haven't really been following in order to simplify the rules was that they were going to send, and it's right in the paperwork here, they were going to send get the grants out to you, grant requests out to you early enough so that you could get your questions answered. Rather than having them ask those questions, you indicate what kind of questions you want asked. If grant comes in 3 days before the meeting and has to be reviewed, that's not happening. There has to be some sort, if you guys want to keep it somewhat loose, you need to give it enough groundwork so that you have a chance to review it and get your questions answered, and they have a chance to answer them before the meeting that they're presenting at. I mean, we've already had that happen with the big 30,000 grant that went down to 5. You all didn't get it in time to question it. He was warned that, it wasn't complete. If you guys need some restrictions, you need some guidelines, you can't let it be arbitrary, you've got to decide what those guidelines are. And if you guys are going to keep it relatively loose, then you have to have a requirement that the grants come in or requests come in early enough that they can go to you, have questions asked, go back to them, have questions answered. So it may not be until the next meeting after that one. Mm-hmm. But you're in charge of this money and you're collecting it from your taxpayers. So you have a responsibility.
That's right. Howard, you were about to say something.
Yes, and this kind of segues into the next question, but as far as the funding request process, typically what happens is that when I send the link to you all with the agenda, I also attach the funding request within that document for you all to review. What will happen now moving forward is that we will make sure that all the individual funding requests that come in, you all get those 10 days prior to the meeting or 2 weeks before. And then with that, I will ask you specifically to review the grant request and respond back. And then on that note, I'll be able to provide that dialogue for any questions that you all may have to the funder in order to prep them and prepare them for this meeting. And then also be able to respond back to you all with whatever those questions are. So that way it would be a total process. So I will no longer send the funding request with the links. It will come as its own individual email to you all moving forward.
Okay, so now, did I? Okay, what I was going to say is that we need to move forward a bit. What's the best way to move forward? Do you want us right now to give you more direction, or are you prepared to create some suggested administrative procedures for us to look at the next meeting?
Well, we can have this discussion, then you all can review it next month to be able to put it to a vote, if you so choose, or if you want to put it to a vote today. The goal for us is to be able to prepare, if you want to have funders come in the next month meeting, to be able to provide the request. Or you can say that we don't want to allow any requests to come in until we complete this process. So the choice is yours as a board.
Right. Well, I think until we come to a conclusion on how we want to proceed with funding, I don't think we should proceed with funding. That's just, but we can't delay it over long because people are waiting that may have good ideas.
And we do have a funding request. We have one funding request that will come before the board once we have this process complete.
Is that time sensitive?
Well, at this point, yes.
So what direction can we give Howard in terms of preparing some administrative guidelines for us? What do we want in terms of how much participation, who has to participate?
Well, for this particular question, the question was asked, do you all want to have a minimum or maximum grant funding amount? So in the application, if you all are to move forward with having or voting on a maximum or a minimum, then we would revamp the policy to add that and whatever the total amount would be, and also add that to the application process.
Howard, there's none now? There's no minimum?
Well, there is no minimum or maximum. And way the application process was set up, the goal was to make that process easier and then bring any legitimate requests to you all as board members for review. And then you all can exercise judgment in terms of what documents, what funding limit that you want to see. And in terms of skin the game, have the funding requester provide the details to you for the project or for their marketing event, and also they're skipping the game for the total project cost.
Okay, so I propose that we consider that funding requests should not amount, instead of a dollar amount, that they should be limited to say, and this is open for discussion, but say arbitrarily 40% of the budget for that year defined for that particular goal. So like if the funding for that goal is $100,000, no one participant can ask for more than 40% of it.
Okay.
I'm just throwing that out there.
I was looking at more of a third of it, but it should be a minimum, because how often do we get $100 request or $200 request?
And going by looking at the budgets from the previous years for what the DDB funded, I believe
I think the amount of paperwork somebody has to do to go through this process would kind of eliminate people that are only wanting $100. It's just not worth the effort. So,
well, in fiscal year 17-18, there were 16 events that total $104,000, and that was the largest over a 5-year period, starting from 2015 going to 2020.
about $5,000.
Give or take.
Bring the board down to $2,500 and then.
Yeah, that sounds good.
A percentage of our budget.
2,500 minimum, 40% of the,
Or 25% of our budget, I mean, you can blow it on a quarter of it.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about somebody asking for 2,500 when they only need 1,200 just so that they qualify
yeah, we
to
can figure
apply.
that out.
We can?
Yeah.
I don't know that I could. Just a second, Elise had another comment.
This one's not legal, it's a suggestion. You may want to consider having different minimums for different things, or different maximums on your individual funding for a specific business. If it fits within the other grounds, you might want to make that lower than for an event that is covering a larger portion of downtown. So you might not want to restrict the Capitol Theater to the same amount as you would, or Jazz Holiday to the same amount as you would to somebody who wants to put signage. So, I mean, when this is not an absolute issue where everything has to be the same, as long as you keep your everything within the category the same. Okay?
Right.
Good suggestion.
Yeah. Well, right now, we're just dealing with the marketing portion of the discussion. So we're not talking about signage or about promotional materials or things like that. We're just talking about events.
Well,
Right?
for this question, this is covering all 3 of the funding categories.
This
Or
one
this-
question covers all 3?
Yes. So does the DDB want to adopt minimum or maximum for grant funding amounts? Because a grant request can come in for any one of those 3.
Okay, then we should, she's probably correct that we probably don't want the same number for all 3.
Yeah, I agree.
But we should decide on a number for each one. Let's just quickly go through. So most of our funding, marketing stuff usually goes into a broader environment than just an individual business. Business assistance, by its definition, primarily goes to one business. So it should be, in my view, a much smaller amount than what we might give to a marketing.
And for the
proposal.
marketing, the DDB cannot market any one business. It has to market either entity as a whole to be able to support initiatives that take place in downtown.
Right.
And for the individual businesses, it could be training or it could be signage for that specific business under
Now-
business assistance.
In our budget, do we not have set amounts defined for marketing, business assistance?
Yes, there is a budget allocation for each category.
Caitlin?
This may go to what you were about to ask, but when you're talking about 40%, when we look at total marketing budget is 189,901. So are you talking about 40%
Of that number.
That total? Okay.
Yes. So I was thinking for that, it might be as high as 40%. I've heard 33%. I've heard other numbers. For somebody's individual project, if somebody just wants something for their own business, I think we should just say, it can't be over X thousands of dollars, just can't be over $10,000 or something like that. And if somebody wants to build out a restaurant, we're not where to come to for funding to build out a restaurant. That's a CRA function or.
That'll be something I'll explain to any grant requests that come in, that you all do not fund
Yeah.
individual initiatives for businesses.
We might help with the signage or
Signage.
the awnings or something out front, but we wouldn't be putting in, a triple sink for them. Sir?
I don't want to get in your business, but to me, it seems like you have a laundry list here of things that and I think you just need to go down the laundry list and make motions of limits and things that you need to do. I think you've all
To get through the process.
discussed and have
Yeah. Okay.
decision-making process already pretty much done in your heads.
Okay, so let's,
One at a time and go down at it.
let's pick a percentage for the marketing goal. Does somebody want to make a motion for what our
Is this the
marketing,
percent of the entire
of just the marketing portion of the budget?
that we get?
Yes, that we assign, yeah. Somebody want to make a motion?
I move, we cap it at 40%.
Okay, do we have a second?
Or less.
Yeah, my concern is then, as long as we don't box ourselves, as Elise was recommending to us.
I didn't get that.
Elise was recommending to us that not to box ourselves, because we might, so,
Right, but let's see if we have a second for the motion before we discuss it further. Do we have a second on this motion?
I would
Just
like
a-
that motion clarified before you discuss it further. 40% of what?
40% of the marketing goal budget.
Line item
But
30.
you can ask for more than 40% of the marketing goal budget,
That's right.
and you don't have to grant up to 40%.
correct.
That's
Right.
just,
Cap.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no one entity can ask for more than 40% of the funds allocated for marketing goals.
And it's not necessarily the entire 40% of that.
It's a moot point anyway, because we don't have a second, so that motion dies. So, do we have another motion on this step? Because we need to get some business done, so if somebody can make a motion, whatever motion you would like to make.
Yeah, I was pushing for 30%
Well,
of it.
you can make a motion.
I'll second
Make a
that.
motion, go for 30%.
I'll second it.
Okay, so did you get that, Howard? We have a motion from Shahab. We have a second from Ray. Okay, now we're open for discussion on that point. Any discussion?
neither your secretary nor I heard the motion. Your
Can
secretary-
you state the motion?
The motion is to, not to spend more than 30% of our marketing budget on one specific entity request.
Okay, that makes a question for me. You just said request rather than just entity. Does that mean the same entity can make multiple requests?
I
Like one
don't see
every
any
month?
reason why an entity can't come and ask for some other project.
For one project then.
Okay,
Per project.
so
Okay.
can you clarify the wording so that the secretary can note it down?
Yeah, we need something clear back here.
My recommendation is, we take no more, we do not give out more than a third of our marketing budget.
That's different from 30%. You gotta be precise with the numbers,
30% of our marketing budget
right?
for a specific entity.
For specific,
For one project.
Correct.
One project or
Yeah.
one entity?
One project.
Open the discussion, but my thought was to one entity.
That's what I,
Correct.
one entity.
So they can come back and get another, oh, they can't come back, they're done.
Correct.
okay. So you seconded that
I
motion.
second it.
Okay, so now, discussion on that point. Is there any
Anybody wants to
discussion?
change it to, they can come back again, or?
Well, they have to make another motion.
Caitlin?
When you say they can come back in, are you referring to that entity could come back? Because the way the motion's currently drafted, it would just be that entity is done for the
Right.
budget. Okay, so they wouldn't be able to come back and go above and beyond the 30%.
That's my thought process.
Sure.
For the year, then the next year they can. Yeah, okay.
Okay, now go ahead,
I
Howard.
do have a question. So if we're talking about 30% of the marketing budget as an example, if the budget is $100,000 starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we're only going to allocate 30% of that budget, so that would be like $30,000. Then as that number goes down, then are we still talking about 30% of the overall budget or just the $30,000?
Of the original budget.
Of the original budget.
Yeah, everybody, it's the same percentage for everybody, yeah, I would think. Is that what your intent was, Shahab?
That's correct.
Okay.
But then if we don't have enough, then that's the communication to them that we don't have enough, that much to give you. What's available is X amount.
Okay, so any other discussion on this point? All in favor?
I,
Aye? Was that unanimous? I didn't see. Yeah, okay, it is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, what's the next point we need to discuss, sir?
So we got
We did the marketing
so we got to
goal.
do business assistance and policy and project.
Okay. Business assistance is funding support for local business. So give us a rundown on what kind of things could go into that category, just really briefly.
So in the business assistance, this could be the signage for a business, and it could be a sign or signage on the windows as long as it does not exceed the city requirements for signage. It could be training for businesses. So like as an example, if we had multiple businesses that needed training on marketing their business or how to do QuickBooks, then you all could provide training to those businesses to educate them on that process.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion with an amount or percentage?
Elise had it.
I just wanted to be clear that this would not necessarily be paid to a business, that it's for business development and marketing in downtown. So it's broader than just one business coming in and asking for something. For instance, the training, that's something you can offer to businesses generally. Some sort of marketing brochure of what's available downtown. So it's not limited to just you helping a single business.
But if we put a sign for Joe's Smoke Shop, he's the only one that's benefiting from that sign.
That's right. So I'm saying that's not as written when I'm reading what you all already have, unless you're changing your work plan.
Mm-hmm.
Giving money to an individual business is a very small part of this category.
Right?
This category is attracting businesses downtown and keeping businesses downtown, and it not necessarily means paying those businesses money directly, because with your budget, as what you've done already recognizes is not big enough to make that big a difference if you have to pay every business. It's what do you do to advertise those businesses, to train those businesses, to help those businesses?
Okay.
That all falls in this category.
Right. So, okay,
Have we done many of that?
we have done a couple
We've
of
done signs and
a couple of signs and
Yeah.
awnings and things like that. So I would like to ask somebody if they would be willing to make a motion for a set dollar amount or a set percentage of that business assistance goal, whatever you prefer, just in the interest of getting moving.
but would it be for all businesses or just a business?
It's your motion, just on this topic.
To clarify, this is
Yeah.
just limited to funding requests. So it's not like if we were to create some new policy or program and it's not pursuant to a request, we're just talking about if someone says, I have an idea and I want it to be funded by line item 37, this is the limit that we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Just to clarify. So if we have something that we create, it's not
Yeah,
covered by
these
this.
are, if some public person comes to Howard with a proposal, that he has a list of things that he can look at to make a decision on whether to present it to us or not. The board is still free to spend money as a board however they see fit. That's not what we're talking about here right now. If we come up with a brilliant idea, we have that option at any time in the year. But just so that Howard has a way to go forward on how to write this. And so we need some guidance on, what is the size of the business assistance portion of our budget? Do you have a number for that? Just off the top of your head?
242,586.
242,000? Roughly?
Roughly,
Yeah,
give
okay,
or take a cent.
okay.
And what, I have a question. What's the biggest amount we've paid for, to someone from that category?
For business assistance,
I don't think that's an
Or
easy
some
one for
examples.
him to go
Technically,
back
wouldn't
on.
that be Jolly Trolley, 17,586?
yes, it would be.
That sounds about right, yes.
Can I make a motion?
You can make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, in the name of simplicity, to duplicate the previous motion across all three categories. So that it's 30% or 33% cap per entity, and one entity, I believe was the wording. That way we don't create a massive amount of confusion based on three categories.
Thoughts?
30% then.
30%.
Okay, so you making that motion?
Basically, we replicate it across all three
Can
categories.
you make that as a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make that motion, that we replicate 30%, 33%,
30.
30.
30%, sorry, for each category as a cap per entity.
Does someone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
We can always change this, correct?
Festus
If we run
seconds
into-
it. Okay, now it's open for discussion. Any further discussion? Okay, and yes, to answer you, we can modify this, but we can't do it every month.
Correct.
So at some point, we'll revisit it. Okay, so I'll put it up for a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Okay, so we're not going to differentiate between these.
Okay, so moving along, so the next question that was posed to you all as board members, should the DDB institute some type of matching requirements or other financial requirements of applicants? 6 board members responded with a yes, and 1 board member responded with no, but with a caveat. So under this category for question 3, Keenan responded with a yes, and his response was financial requirements to have the applicant have a letter of commitment for the grants approved above $20,000. To expand on that?
Nope.
Not sure what that meant. What does a letter of commitment involve and commit? What does it commit to?
For the purpose of asking, right?
So the purpose in this conversation, like jog a memory, when we were discussing this would be the goal to make sure that they actually complete the project, or if it was an event that they were going to be putting on, they would have a letter of commitment to be able to, and I don't want to necessarily put words in your mouth,
You're
but
doing
paraphrasing,
fine.
is to complete the project in its entirety. So the financial side of it, you're going to ask for an applicant to provide a letter of commitment to the board. And that would be on an amount of above $20,000 if it was funded.
And what the importance of this letter would be that if they did not comply with that, that we wouldn't provide any funding? Is that what
Actually, I
this
don't
means?
recall.
I'm just trying to get what this means.
I don't recall.
Okay.
Seemed like a good idea a month ago, but I think the idea was to make sure they followed through. And on big projects, we're not allocating money and then it disappears. So the commitment was they were going to participate, put skin in the game, and follow through. But
Why not just do it on a reimbursement basis?
perfect.
Well, the way the
That seems
DDB
to
process
work.
works currently, everything is done on a reimbursement basis based off of a grant agreement, which I'll walk through the funding process once I finish reviewing these. But as it stands right now, unless an applicant comes in and asks for money up front, everything in that grant agreement aligns with them having the event and then submitting their receipts that once the event is over with. And then on that note, I review it to make sure that those expenses are eligible based off the funding agreement, and also any requirements that you all as board members pose to the applicants during that time when you all are reviewing and approving the application.
Okay, so I think, and somebody else can modify, this is just to generate some discussion here. I think that if it's a project that is to benefit primarily the person that's submitting the proposal, that their participation must be at least 50% of the project, of that particular item, for us to match the rest, and for us not to exceed that. if it's for their benefit.
And actually, Paris, that was your comment.
Amazing.
And pretty much all the other board members
Consistent.
responded with having skin in the game, having a percentage, submitting actual financial plan or data plan. And one that was different was Shahab's. He actually wanted a return on investment and data metrics for the projects that provide the cost breakdown, whether it was materials, labor, and also operations.
Okay. So, said might be somebody want to add or contribute to this?
That 50% sounds good. They have to have something that's part of what they want to do.
Okay. So what we need is a motion. I can't make motions.
Is that up to 50%? Or-
Yeah, they can ask for less.
Okay.
But and to be clear, I'm not saying that if they're doing a $100,000 project and they want us to pay $5,000 for a specific piece of it, for that specific piece, we're willing to pay half.
Okay.
Like if they're doing a $100,000 remodel and part of it is a $5,000 sign, well, we'll give them $2,500 towards that sign. Okay, not $50,000.
Exactly.
Up to
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't make motions. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we fund a matching amount up to 50% to an individual business.
Okay, that's requesting a grant
Does that make sense?
for their own,
I was asking, does that make sense?
is that something you can work with? Is that enough to write something?
If I am correct, what your motion was that the DDB would fund no more than 50% of any individual business's request that otherwise qualified for funding.
Exactly.
That sounds better, yeah.
Yes. Okay, do we have a second for that motion? Do we have a second? Shahab seconds. Okay, any additional discussion on this, Caitlin?
Just a question. So my understanding of when you said it was that the idea was if it only benefits that business, then it would
Yes.
apply for 50%.
Yes.
But I'm understanding the motion not to be solely limited to that.
No, I think he said an applicant for his business. I think it's in the motion that it's, if it only benefits their business, it's a
Right.
50% match.
Is that clear?
If it only benefits an individual business, it doesn't fall within your guidelines anyway. It has to be something that shows up for downtown, so you've got that in consideration anyway.
Good.
But you're talking about something that is specifically benefiting an individual business and falls within your guidelines.
And falls within the guidelines, yeah.
So a $10,000 sign, we would pay $5,000,
Up to 5.
right, up to.
Okay? We still have the issue of something that's not directly benefiting a particular entity. Okay, we'll take that up next. So do we have a second for that? That was Shahab, right?
Yeah, I had a question
Yeah.
on this, just with you guys. Let's say the person requesting 10,000, and we say we do up to 5, and we look at it, discuss and say, based on that, we could approve 4,000. Can that be done?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to.
That's just a cap.
That's the maximum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any additional discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Okay, now the next part of this same question, dealing with if it's not primarily to benefit the person submitting the proposal, if it's a more general thing, like some volunteer group wants to put on a parade downtown, and it fits the other criteria, that does not require, in my view, 50% match. What does it require? I leave that up to you.
If it's for the benefit of the
Up to-
community, then we could pay 100%,
Okay,
up to 99.9%.
up to 100%. Okay, does someone want to make a motion to that effect?
Well, let me ask you a question. I want to make sure I understand this for clarification. So if it's under business assistance, then and a request came in, you only fund up to 50% for that applicant. But if it was something for marketing, for an event that took place that benefit all of downtown or generate foot traffic to downtown, then on that note, you could fund potentially 100% of that versus the 50%?
That's what we're saying.
Okay. So in terms of the policy, because with what we're discussing now, then we would have to do two things. Clarify the information in the policy, because the way it reads right now, there is no funding limits in the policy, so that would have to be added. And then when we go to the form, so as far as our current funding request form, this is for marking special events and business assistance. So we have two categories right here, the total project costs and then the amount of grant funds. And so this is what I actually would request from you all as board members, and then given the total project costs for their skin in the game. So on that note, if I'm thinking this all the way through, then we'd have to also modify this form to reflect the current status of what you as a board are proposing.
I would think so. Now, like if somebody comes to us and wants an awning, and it costs $8,000 for the awning, we're saying we'll give up to $4,000 for that awning. Now, if some organization or group or even that entity says, I'm willing to put on an event, part of that event is we want to put up, instead of just having traffic barriers blocking the street, we want to put up nice panels that are reusable and we can use every time we have an event, and it looks nicer than traffic, those, Joe's things. Well, that we would be willing to fund, if I hear the board correctly, we would be willing to fund up to 100% of that. Not necessarily that we have to pay 100%, but the applicant would be able to ask for up to 100% participation.
That's how it stands now, without any change.
Yeah, is that,
So let's leave it alone.
so you understand? Does that make sense with the motion that we have?
I was looking at your policy, and your policy is broader than what was stated up there, and you're right. I agree with yours, except it wouldn't be just limited to events, it would be limited to other types of marketing.
Any expenditure,
And a group like
any,
somebody came in, and it was for businesses other than restaurants. It might fall under this category.
okay. So we have a motion. Is there any additional discussion?
What is our motion?
I don't think we need a motion.
Wording of it.
I thought we went on to the second part and that we were going to do up to 100% funding
That
of
already,
the motion we just discussed on an individual. The new motion is on not benefiting a particular individual, but on the broader downtown, that we would fund up to 100% rather than up to 50%.
But we
Do we
already,
have a motion?
no.
I didn't hear that motion, to be honest.
Oh, does somebody want to?
We didn't have a motion,
I
we
thought-
had discussion.
Okay, well, does someone want to make that motion?
And before making that motion, you might also want to consider that when you've made this kind of broad brush, like on the other areas, you said no more than a certain percentage of your budget, for that matter.
That's still true.
That's already there.
That's still there.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion if that's already our current policy?
I don't think so.
Can you just go forward with that? Okay, let's move on then.
okay. So then for the next question, should the DDB incorporate diversity and equity considerations into its funding process? 3 of the board members responded with yes, and 4 of the board members responded with no. So there's no change in policy or process. And the overall responses for caveats is that you all did not want to exclude or would not exclude any funding requests coming to you all overall. Okay. So then for question number 5, is the DDB comfortable with the current funding policy? And all 7 board members responded with yes. So other than what we've just discussed here, in terms of changes, there would be no other changes to the policy or to the process. And for the next question, are there types of activities or projects the DDB does not want to fund? 1 board member responded with a yes, and 6 other board members responded with a no. So no change in the policy or process for this one. And that concludes our discussion on the DDB funding policies and process.
You'll be back with us with something we can,
At next month's board meeting, I will bring the information to you and provide that information to you 10 days prior for review in preparation for next month's board meeting.
thank you, Howard. Michael, you look like you wanted to say something earlier?
No,
You're good?
that wasn't so easy, was it?
No, but we got through it.
Well, those are tough decisions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now The Downtown Summit update, Keenan?
Ooh. Do I do a handout? Do I just pass them around? or-
Sure, just pass them out.
Over that way.
COVID
I don't think I have
infested
enough.
handout. These COVID infested handout.
I'm
There's one for Ray.
sanitized, I swear.
There it is.
We had a phone call, a Zoom call, about an hour long, a couple weeks ago. Most of the time was spent on figuring out the date we would have the live meeting. So that was fun. Speaking of decisions. We did get a decision. That's going to be on the 30th, correct, Rosemary? Here in the library, second floor. And open to the public, correct? So this is the agenda we agreed upon for that meeting. If you all have any other input or goals or objectives that you'd like to add, now's the time. It looks good, we'll just roll with that. And then tonight I need to know who else wants to join me. We're each bringing two. If
Can't help but notice my name is there.
I was just suggesting with, there's gonna be 4 groups, diversity,
Happy to.
but I can't nominate you.
What time on the 30th?
What time is it? I can nominate her? Oh, well then I'd like to nominate Caitlin, who's already involved in the diversity project, and with the 4 groups, I think it'd be a good mix.
Okay, I don't think we need a formal proposal for that. Just if she's willing to do it, it's a done.
Okay, good.
Okay, so this looks good. Just for future reference, this would be a good thing for us to receive, a number of days prior to the meeting. So we actually have a chance to see it prior to the meeting and, have some thought into it before we discuss it.
I stand corrected.
There you go.
What was the date of this?
Duly chastised.
Yeah, thanks.
June
Okay.
30th. June
What's that?
30th.
30 June.
Okay. I don't know that there's any board action required here. I don't know that there's a motion or anything required. Is there anyone that wants to address this or make any comments? Okay, then you guys will just go to the meeting and report back.
What time is it at? 9 a.m.
Lucky you. Okay, so we will leave that one. We'll go on to item 5.3, the Equity Committee update. Caitlin, please update us.
Sure. Rosemary and I have had a number of, I would say, really effective and productive meetings with different community leaders in the area. We still have some more that we're reaching out to and following up with meetings. But the purpose has kind of been twofold. One, to say, hey, we're the DDB, this is what we do. Some of them hadn't heard of us before. And kind of let them know, here's the grant funding process. We love getting grant requests, especially, for each different organization, what they're looking for. But twofold is also to say, hey, we're also looking for input from community leaders, not only externally in terms of how can we affect positive change with equity and diversity considerations within downtown, but also internally if you have suggestions, which we're continuing to kind of take down, and I'm sure at some point I'll have a full proposal, but that's where we are right now. So hopefully we get our funding policy all buttoned up so we can get lots of wonderful requests.
Great. Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, so now we'll move on to the CRA update. Assistant City Manager Michael Delk.
CRA update. All right, we've got a few things here. We had our first of the recent iteration of the farmers market in May. It was very successful. The next one is going to take place on June 12th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have more than 60 vendors.
Where is it?
Pardon?
Is that the one?
This is on the kind of the PSTA site over here, just north of Court on Myrtle. So it's a very highly visible location, and no doubt contributed to the success of the original one. So, good stuff. CRA and Clearwater Main Library are partnering for Story Walk, a summer reading program of where we'll place pages of children's books in downtown storefronts, so families and their children can traverse downtown reading the book. You can find out more about that by heading to myclearwater.com/Clearwater Story Walk. The first mural in Phase 2 of the city's downtown mural program is complete at 701 Franklin. There are 2 more murals set to be installed this summer on the Pinellas Trail and at the intersection of Garden Avenue and Cleveland Street. The next series in the CRA's wearable art exhibit debuts this month. Artist and organizer Lena Teixeira will host an event at Pour Yours starting at 6:30 p.m. on June 5th to debut the collection. And attendees will have a chance to tour the exhibit along the 500 and 600 blocks of Cleveland Street to meet the artists. Green Culture, a new restaurant, is coming to 420 Cleveland Street in September of this year. It's a modern inspired plant-based restaurant that focuses on healthy foods for healthy living. Foods are made fresh and they use all eco-friendly products that are ocean-friendly certified. So that's a nice thing. I would add that we've had 2 applications so far for business assistant grants. One is for Scorpion Hall Incubator Project, a pretty exciting craft brewery facility that is planned. The other is for the Green Culture. That is pending review of the White Box renovation program, which we recently established. So some success there. The city's suite of business assistant grants launched on May 1. The CRA has more than $1.5 million available for commercial beautification, white box renovations, and vacancy reduction. So we want to remind everybody of that. If you have questions about that, anybody who wants to avail themselves of those dollars, the CRA holds a virtual office hours on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to noon, which people are welcome to sign up for, and Howard will tell them how to take advantage of these programs that we have. And lastly, the applications and program descriptions can all be found at downtownclearwater.com, and we'll be reviewing those on a rolling basis. So, Chairman, that's the CRA update.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the chairman's report. I just wanted, Rosemary, what was your status? When are you leaving us?
My last day is July 1st.
July 1st, so we won't, this is your last official meeting with the DDB. So I'd like to thank you for your help and participation during the time you've been with us, and good luck in the future. Okay, so I just wanted to make that. There was an announcement that our city manager, Bill Horn, is retiring, I think, next month. So I'd like to extend our appreciation for his service and to wish him well and a happy and long retirement. And thirdly, our CRA manager is due some congratulations. She delivered another child and is resting comfortably to again return to us next in a month or 2.
Boy or girl?
I think it's
Boy,
another.
thank you.
Okay, so yeah, you caught me on that one. So congratulations to her and a well-deserved rest in the meantime. So with that, we'll go to board members to be heard, beginning on my left.
I'm looking forward to the pandemic going away and seeing how much growth we can get out of it. I'm forgetting about 2020, so I'm looking forward to that.
Shahab?
Summer is here, and I'm actually excited.
Yeah.
I think our city is getting busier and busier, in my opinion, as I see it on traffic, which is
No kid.
the more traffic, the better.
Right.
We're alive.
Great. Festus?
And it's good to be back, and I did see the farmers market. It was very impressive, so well done, guys. Thank you.
Great. Keenan?
The art is beautiful, and have a good summer.
Thank you, Rosemary, for all of your help with the equity committee in general and specifically with the equity committee.
I too am excited for the farmer's market and the green culture restaurant that is on its way. I see a lot of growth in my business on a regular basis, so I know a lot more people are coming here, and it's exciting to see that, and the farmer's market and the art as well. And thank you, Rosemary.
Sorry?
Mr. Chair, you mentioned Mr. Horn and his departure. We don't know when the exact date's going to be. I'm hoping he's going to stay until we have a new manager sitting in the seat. I anticipate that that decision will be made on June 16th at the latest. Also want you all to know that Imagine Clearwater is going forward. We are still completely committed. Just the groundbreaking has been delayed formally until we have a guaranteed maximum price. I think that's important. Also, the committee for the proposals on the Bluff properties was narrowed to one. And this will give an opportunity for the city to do some negotiating, and we'll see what comes out of that. We are not obligated to follow through with that, but we are obligated to go through a good process. We think they're a good developer. And then lastly, I just wanted to tell you that we are not having fireworks in downtown this year. They are going to be held out at Baycare Park. So anyone coming to Coachman July 4th are going to be disappointed. We'll be getting that information out, but it's going to be out at the Phillies site.
Okay, very good.
And I'm very happy to be back and not to have been disposed of quietly and without sorrow. To quote the humanitarian, run up. And I look forward to a productive year.
You can't help yourself, can you? Okay. We're trying very hard to be civil and respectful, but you can't resist a little dig when you have an opportunity. With that, I'd like to call this meeting over at 6:57 in the evening.